Welcome to DevOps Accents, a podcast on everything around DevOps, public cloud, and cloud-native topics, with your hosts, Pablo, Leo, and Kirill.
Hello and welcome to another episode of DevOps Accents, a podcast where we, the co-founders of MKDev, get together to discuss all things around DevOps, cloud-native technologies, AI, and apparently today, data security, because today we invited a very dear friend of us, Filip Verloy, as our guest. Hi, Filip.
Hi, guys. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you for coming. Hi, Pablo.
Hello, everyone.
So for those of our listeners who don't know Filip, Filip serves as Field CTO for Rubrik X in Europe, Middle East, and Asia Pacific regions. In that role, Filip engages and advises customers, partners, and security industry at large, sharing his vast experience, insights, and strategies on data security. The main topic we're going to talk about is today. He was the global Field CTO at API security startup No Name Security, and has previously served at various IT vendors, including Citrix, Dell, Riverbed, and VMware, in roles ranging from staff architect to solution executive, supporting some of the largest and most complex customers' environments. He has been in IT industry for over 20 years, spanning the customers, consulting, and vendor side. And today he is here with us to talk all about it. Hi, Filip, again. So before we start, so this is a traditional questions to all our guests. What's your accent?
Yeah, so I'm based out of Belgium. So I've lived here my entire life. I do travel the world constantly, so I'm almost never home. But most people who live close to Belgium will be able to figure out that's where I came from.
Really? Which region of Belgium are you from? Because from my understanding, it differs. Like in one regions mostly speak like with French accent. In other regions, like it's Dutch, Danish accent.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we have three official languages here in Belgium. So we have Dutch or Flemish, as we call it, in the north, which is where I'm from. We do speak French in the southern part, and then there's a small part which has German as the official language as well. I guess that's why most Belgian people tend to speak English, because we can never figure out which is which.
But I had to say that I was living in Belgium. Even my biggest son is from Belgium. He was born in Brussels. And I was living there several years. And really, the people in the north, they speak in Dutch, as you said, so Flemish, and they speak English. But the people in the south, they speak French. And there is a difference that not all of them speak English, like, for example, what happened because it's a Latin language. And what's happening in the north that is not a Latin language, so it's more similar to the English. So it's super easy to speak English when you speak Flemish. This is the reason. So, and I discovered many times that there are people that tend to, because most of the Flemish speak French, but not all of the Flemish speak French, and not all the French speakers speak Flemish. And it was a moment that when I was in the office, because I was working in IBM, that they decided to speak in English. And it was for me something like a shock, because, okay, I'm coming from a country with 5 languages too. It's not, I'm not telling that this is different. It's the same, But it's still a shock when you see people in the same country that they speak a third nation language, and it's super cool. Okay, it's strange, but it's different.
Yeah, for sure. I've experienced many times, especially more in the public sector,
Yes.
in Brussels, for sure, is that people tend to speak their own language, which is fine as well. So you're in a meeting, and it's actually a mix of Flemish and French and some English, and people just speak what they're comfortable with, and everybody seems to understand and be okay with it. So yeah, it's kind of funny sometimes.
My first meeting, I remember that I went with a notebook and a ball pen, And if people start to speak in French, start to speak in Flemish and in English, I say, okay, see you. I will. I want to go home, mommy.
I like to learn to recognize different kind of accents, and this is another accents in our collection of DevOps accents. When I was introducing you, Filip, I noticed this interesting position of yours, Field CTO, and what Field CTO even means and how to become one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think Field CTO isn't really there doesn't seem to be like a standard definition of it. Depending on the company that you're in and things like that, it seems to differ. I've seen field CTOs who are part of the sales organization. I've seen field CTOs who are part of the marketing organization. Usually, it's a bit of a combination of both, and even a link to product and engineering as well. So typically, what happens over time is that as a company sort of grows a bit larger, they have more solutions to talk about. They want to figure out, well, how do we translate all of this cool stuff that we're building into the market, and how do we talk to different sort of stakeholders at large companies? Like, how do we translate the products and solutions that we have to make it relevant for a CISO or for an engineer or for an administrator, et cetera. Marketing is, of course, the biggest driver there, but you also need somebody who is comfortable in relaying that message in front of large and small audiences, and who does all of the speaking engagements and so on. So that's why I think today you see more and more people with this role of field CTO. At VMware, for example, they call it a chief technologist. So I guess it depends a little bit on where you sit, which company you work for. But I tend to see it as a nice mix between a pre-sales role and a sort of marketing role. So it's nice that you get to work on a lot of different things, even during the same day, which I think is what makes this role pretty exciting.
Cool.
So this has nothing to do with like getting out of the office or getting somewhere, like, because I coming from marketing background, like we have a field marketer, right? It's when you get to a conference or you talk to people directly and somehow engaging them in the fields. And it is something correlated, like your goals to go to uncharted regions and do something there.
Yeah. I think two thoughts on that. I think you're absolutely right. So the original idea, I think, was we need somebody with a lot of technical background, quote unquote CTO type figure, but somebody who's in the field, right? So somebody who's front and center at events, but also at customers and so on, which isn't, of course, the primary goal of an actual CTO. The primary goal of an actual CTO is to sort of lead product and figure out what the company needs to build for the next 2 to 5 years. Where is the world going, and what type of solutions do we need to figure out to keep ourselves relevant and to help our customers. So the field CTO part, or the field part, there is then somebody who sort of takes some of that and brings it into the field, as you rightfully point out. So yeah, that's absolutely the case. But again, there's no standard definition as far as I know. People tend to look at field CTO sometimes as a pre-sales person who wears a nice suit and talks to executives at companies, but basically knows the same things as a traditional pre-sales person. Which I think is largely the case for a lot of companies. But it's also about being able to talk about more broadly what the industry is doing, what customers want. Step outside of your own solutions and your own products, and really figure out where is the puck going, let's say, for the next couple of years, and focus on that.
I can imagine this is like a more the position with a lot more responsibility than I don't know, a usual CTO because you have to influence a lot more minds. Yeah. How did you become one? Like, what was your career path? And what was the main drive for you to switch from pure CTO, from pure technical role to something different?
Yeah, sure. So I've been, as you said during the introduction, I've been in the industry for more than 20 years now or so. So I started in the late 90s,
Yeah.
more on the engineering side. So I worked for an early stage startup out of Belgium, helping ISPs build cable-based telephony systems. I started my first vendor role in the mid 2000s with Citrix Systems in a pure pre-sales capacity. But what I was doing there, next to my, let's say, traditional pre-sales work, helping customers and selling the solution, making customers successful with the software that Citrix sold, was also a lot of this outreach, if you will, writing a bunch of blog posts, creating white papers, figuring out. Meetups weren't really a thing yet at that time, but volunteering wherever I could at events and so on. Because I was really excited about the technology. So you have a sort of day job, 9 to 5, although it's never really 9 to 5 when you work for a vendor, but let's say 9 to 5. And then after hours, you're so excited about the technology that you still want to, evangelize it and talk to people and create content and, help others implement the technology and learn about the technology. That was sort of the driver, I think, that led me to becoming a field CTO, is taking that excitement of wanting to share all of this with the world. So that was a natural fit into this position. So I think it led from a pure pre-sales role to helping out, internal technical marketing teams with a lot of content and so on, to then essentially being asked to take on a field CTO role. I think in 2016, 2017 or so with Rubrik. And yeah, I've been doing that ever since almost.
So basically, this was the case of not so or probably famous saying, like, do what you like and find someone who will pay you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the ultimate goal and the ultimate dream, isn't it? But yeah, I think if you're in this field and if you're excited about it, that's the best. That's the best combination. I think there's a Roald Dahl saying that says, like, lukewarm is no good. You really have to be excited about something. Like if you feel lukewarm or just meh about it, it's just a job. Like, who cares? But if you really love this technology and want to spend a lot of time on it and with it, I think that's key to success, really.
Okay, but what's exciting about data security?
So I've originally always sort of been on the infrastructure side of IT, let's say, building storage networks, building actual networks, looking at virtualization when it was becoming a thing. And then I joined Rubrik in 2016 because they were on this mission to disrupt a very, very sleepy market of data management. So what was happening is that you had a lot of vendors out there already who had been building these backup and recovery systems for many decades, but there was very little innovation in those solutions at the time. Mm-hmm. It was just, we create a backup copy of our data, and in case something happens, we would potentially have the capability to get data back from a tape-based system and restore our infrastructure after a couple of days or weeks, as it turned out to be at that time. But there really wasn't a lot of innovation from a technology perspective. So what Rubrik set out to do was, why don't we disrupt this market by making backup and recovery exciting again and bringing in a whole lot more capabilities next to just traditional backup and recovery into that market. So things like cyber capabilities. So, can we store the data in an immutable file system, but can we also ensure that if a customer wants to restore data after a ransomware attack, for example, there is a sort of guarantee that the data won't be affected, and we know exactly which data to bring back, as to not essentially bring back the the malware that caused the ransom in the first place. So things like threat hunting, ransomware detection based on anomalies, all these kinds of additional capabilities on top of a traditional backup solution. That's sort of what made this market exciting again. And we're now seeing that most other vendors are starting to slowly move in that direction as well, because that's sort of what customers expect these days from a data management solution.
Because I can see that, for example, Rubrik, there is a solution for, okay, not everything, but almost everything, no? Because I see that you have solution for whatever cloud you have, for GCP, Google Cloud, you have for AWS, you have for Azure, but even you have solution for Kubernetes. So, but my question is, what kind of solution in case of, because I was watching the video about the solution that is offered for Google Cloud, that is a way to make backups, of the whatever load that you have, you're able to that. But what is the solution, for example, that you're offered to Kubernetes? Only to understand, what a person can receive if they're using, imagine this Rubrik for Kubernetes.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? So really the idea of Rubrik is to secure the world's data. And that's a big goal. The world's data can live everywhere. To your point, it can live on premises, it can live in the public cloud, it can live in SaaS applications, it can sit on top of a Kubernetes environment. So if you have this big, hairy, audacious goal of saying we want to secure the world's data, you really have to support all of those different infrastructure components and data buckets, if you will. So if we sort of take a step back and look at how we actually do that, and it's the same for maybe on-prem VMware environments and on-prem Kubernetes environments as it is for even managed Kubernetes environments in the cloud, like EKS and AKS and so on. It's really about simplifying that data management through an abstraction. And that abstraction with Rubrik is an SLA-based policy system. So you basically tell the Rubrik, this is how I want to protect my data. I want, X amount of copies per day. This is where it needs to end up. It needs to be encrypted. It needs to be shipped off to long-term archive storage in the public cloud or in some sort of on-prem location, doesn't really matter. And then Rubrik figures out, well, what does that mean for Kubernetes? What does that mean for VMware? What does that mean for physical hosts on premises? So Rubrik then translates that policy into whatever technical configuration that needs to happen locally, on-prem, in the cloud, in SaaS, etc., and sort of figures that out. So in Kubernetes, there's, of course, the data you want to protect, meaning initially when we thought about Kubernetes and containers, we thought about stateless applications, like who wants to back up a stateless application? Doesn't really matter. Like if something blows up, we just spin up another version of it and we're good to go. The reality is, of course, there's a lot of data in those systems that you need to protect somehow. So, and today people are running actually databases in containers and so on as well. But so you have to figure out what is the configuration of that Kubernetes cluster look like. We secure that configuration. So there's a backup copy of that config in case, the Kubernetes cluster blows up. You want to be able to recover it because you want to bring back those applications. And then you also want to protect that stateful data that's part of that distributed application that happens to be built from a containerized distributed architecture perspective. So the idea is really we want to bring that policy abstraction to all of those environments, be it cloud, be it on-prem, be it Kubernetes, be it SaaS, etc.
Cool. Because for me, this is what I can see here, even in the dashboard, where you can see all these elements for, imagine AWS with Aurora, with S3, RDS, when you go to, vSpheres for VMs. So at the end, it's like a tool for all the data of the company. So whatever you have, okay, we are going to be under control. And I can see that it's working because you are jumping from 2021, 2,000 employees for almost 4,000 now in 2023. So it's working and working very well. So, as far as I can see, it's fantastic. It's very, very well done.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple reasons for that. Of course, if you just look at the market, there's enormous data growth, of course. So the need for a data management system is increasing just overall. If you think about data growth over the last 18 months, that was 42% is what we figured out. If you look at data growth on premises, it's about 20%. In the cloud, it's about 43%, and in SaaS, it's over 140%. So we keep creating more and more data, and the expectation is in the next 5 years, we will have 7 times as much data as we have today. So if you want to manage and secure that data, you need systems and solutions to be able to do that. And the other thing, of course, is back to Leonid's point of data security, is we have this problem of data exfiltration, data breaches, and ransomware attacks, which has made this type of solution front and center for a lot of organizations today. You have to sort of figure out how resilient is my organization in case a cyber attack happens, and what are they actually trying to get at from a malicious actor perspective. And what they're typically trying to get at will be your data, right? So if you think about a malicious actor and what purpose do they have, the purpose will, in 9 out of 10 cases, will be some sort of profit, right? And they will get to profit by either stealing your data or encrypting your data and demanding a ransom. Or in some other cases, they might have a larger cost, like they want to cause some disruption because they don't agree with your politics or something like that. Yeah. But in most cases, they're actually trying to disrupt you by ransoming your data. That's why you're seeing this enormous growth for a company like Rubrik.
Good. So then, can we consider Rubrik as a SaaS, or is something above that?
Yeah, so Rubrik is a SaaS-based data management solution, and more and more also a cybersecurity, cyber resiliency solution as well. So I think the more interesting things that we've been doing the last couple of years are actually in the cybersecurity realm. For example, we acquired the company in the summer of last year, as well to focus on data security posture management, for example. So you'll see us build out the cyber capabilities more and more, because that is what the need of the customers is today. They have migrated data to the cloud. They have migrated data to Kubernetes environments, to your point, to SaaS applications and so on. And now they need to safeguard that data. So we need to come up with new capabilities that will allow customers to do that. And data security posture management is one of those new capabilities when it comes to cloud and SaaS that will help safeguard customers' data.
Cool. So, imagine that you have a customer that says, okay, I want to hire a security company because I want to make a consultancy, something like that. So then Rubrik is not the company, or is the company? Because this is always my point when you're a SaaS, no? Because when you're a SaaS, at the end, you're a software. And in this case, if a company, imagine, I don't know, VMware is telling to you, okay, we need to make an audit in our company, to make a scan, to check. This is something that Rubrik can do?
Yeah, so Rubrik is 100% channel focused. So even if we sell our software and our SaaS solutions to the market, it will always be through a channel partner ecosystem. Same thing for services around it. So we do have our own services organization, but for the most part, services will be delivered from our channel organization. So it will be Rubrik resellers and Rubrik partners performing those services, because Rubrik is also part of a larger security ecosystem, right? So if you think about a customer's organization, cloud data management, data security is one part of the puzzle, but there's other solutions that you need to integrate with, for example. So let's say from a security perspective, maybe you want to integrate with a SIEM tool or a SOAR tool, or in some sort of SOC process, you have to fit your SaaS solution into that. Then we rely on the partner ecosystem to work with the customer to make those integrations and to build those environments out. We also do have a ransomware recovery team inside of Rubrik as well. Because one of the main use cases of the Rubrik solution is to give you cyber recovery capabilities in the case of a ransomware attack. So we do have a dedicated team that helps the customer restore after such a ransomware event. But again, it's typically hand in hand with our partner ecosystem as well.
Do you think your project infrastructure is well set and maintained? We know for sure there is always room for improvement. If you are uncertain where to begin, let's first do an audit of what you already have. We will review your setup from every angle: performance, cost, security, high availability, and automation, and provide you with a detailed roadmap of which direction your infrastructure should go, generate concrete tasks for you to implement, or even take on your infra entirely, if you let us, of course.
Cool. And my question that I want to make since I opened the web page, because when you open the web page, there is a logo that says Met Ruby, the generative AI companion for data security. What is this generative AI companion? Because for me, when I know what Rubrik is, and it's a tool for data security, what is understood perfectly, for me, sounds like, we need to talk about AI because it's on the peak. And if you don't speak about AI, it's not, because I don't get that line in the first line of Rubrik. For me, it's straight.
Yeah, good point. So yeah, we do have recently announced this Ruby addition to the portfolio. So the idea really is that, let's say in case of a ransomware recovery, there's a bunch of things you need to understand in the environment in order to safely restore your data. So one of those things could be, figuring out what is the blast radius of the attack. Like, what can I safely restore? What shouldn't I restore? Which version of my data should I restore? What malware potentially is inside of my data that I absolutely want to get rid of before I bring it back, before I bring my systems back into production. So you have all of these questions that you need to get answered during a recovery operation. What Ruby can do is you can ask through natural language, you can ask Ruby these questions, and Ruby will figure that out together with you. So if you say, show me, historically, where did this malware appear in my data set, for example, so through natural language, Ruby will figure out what you're sort of after and give you that result. And then you can ask things like, we've detected this malware string, for example. What does it mean? And then it's, can use RAG to sort of figure out, this is, related to this ransomware or this ransomware group or this malware string, and give you the context you need to be able to safely restore your data.
Basically, this is a solution that helps you to interpret the data that came after, attack, and to translate it to a language that a normal person would understand, and that's how it helps.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a chatbot assistant that will help you safely recover your data. And especially during a ransomware recovery, you can imagine that, nerves are high, people are freaking out. Data has to be brought back as quickly as possible because the organization cannot work in all of those cases. So if you have this assistant who you can ask these questions to and help you sort of recover, that will make
emotions.
that process that will make it a whole lot easier.
Yes, but I can imagine that it's an LLM that is connected to operators, and then as soon as you make a question, it's programming the operators, and these operators are executing calls to APIs and is executing whatever recover of data.
Yeah.
But the question is true, because all of us, we know that an LLM sometimes come back with an answer that is statistically is the best answer for this model at this moment, but sometimes it's not the best answer. And I can imagine the guy who lost all the data because maybe went ransom block all the data, and he needs to recover all the data. And the large language model is speaking in.
Yeah, no, absolutely a good point. So the data set that it's trained on, let's say, or the input for Ruby is the Rubrik documentation and the Rubrik API documentation specifically, and then it's augmented with some of those malware, let's say, informational pieces that we can pull from third-party sources. But indeed, it won't hallucinate when it comes to giving you the answer in how you have to restore something that would be really, really bad. So the answer in how to do something, especially a process and a step process, is based on the Rubrik documentation. So it won't make up something that isn't real. But indeed, yeah, it's trained on. So it's narrow AI trained on the Rubrik's documentation set. Essentially, is how you can look at it.
And the name of Ruby, okay, I know that you know, and everyone knows that there is a program language called Ruby. Why called Ruby?
Yeah, so if you think about the company name is Rubrik, and then Ruby is a nice alliteration on the company name. Yeah. I don't, as far as I know, it has nothing to do with Ruby, the programming language. But yeah,
I thought Rubrik was after like rubrication or something like that when you're trying to create a catalog, basically.
Yeah, as far as I know, there's no explanation for the Rubrik name as such, but yeah, it just sounded cool, I think, when the company was created. But yeah, and then Rubrik sort of nicely flows from the Rubrik name.
Okay, so I have like 1.5 million questions because I always trying to ask like more stupid questions, but since we already touched on AI, I want to dig a little bit deeper on this. And since you are here with us, you will be responsible for answering this, because my experience with data breaches, with leaks, is limited to, food delivery data leak and my address exposed to someone else who's selling this data, and then they start calling me and spamming with some commercials or the advertisements. And then there was Facebook huge leak not so long ago, and basically that's it. And I understand that most data protections comes from more expensive background, like when the company have to secure their corporate, secrets and transactions and payment operations or whatnot. And these things, they are usually very, very secure, because it's rare occasion when this data leaked. Even if we check on some news on several years in the past, it rarely appears in the news that some payment methods were leaked or something like that. But since the AI and since the generative AI technology being evolving so fast, I started wondering what else we should protect and how to prevent something from happening. For example, I've seen this commercial, like, I don't know, like it's probably a fear-mongering. I'm sorry, but in this commercial, an image of a girl was talking to their parents from the screen, and it was an AI-generated image of their daughter who talked to them with their daughter's name, with the daughter's voice, and she was warning them from protecting their child and their audios, videos, photos from sharing on the internet, because at some point someone will take all this information, create a fake personality that will call, "Mom, I'm in trouble, send me some money." And this will happen. And is there, once we started talking about AI, is there a way to protect this kind of data, my data, from AI threats in the future? Is it even possible?
It's an interesting one, right? I saw a similar example recently, a discussion on Twitter from Martin Casado, who is who works at Andreessen Horowitz, one of the VCs in Silicon Valley. So apparently he got a phone call, I believe, from somebody who sounded like his wife saying, I had a car accident, I'm in trouble, you need to send me like money to help out and fix this. So apparently the people who organized this were able to figure out, okay, who is this person we're targeting? There's a lot of public information about this person already on the internet. We can sort of figure out what he's sensitive to. We understand he has a wife. We understand where they live. So we can make up this entire sort of story based on all of this online data. So I think the problem really is if you look at what's already available, the cat is already out of the bag, right? A lot of our data is already online. It can already be used as input for a lot of these things.
Yeah, and it's not like the data was stolen, right? I share it.
Yeah. We're all too happy to share a lot of information about ourselves on social media and on blog posts and all of these things. And to your point, you don't even need a data breach or a data leak to get to a lot of this interesting information. And then, of course, with these tools and these large language models, what data they can use as input, they're so good at parsing all of that information and connecting disparate sources together as well, right? So you might have some public information from your social media posts combined with information from your company website, et cetera, and people are able to build like a very complete profile of what you do, what you like, what your family looks like, et cetera. So these types of things are absolutely becoming real. It's hard to get the genie back in the bottle. I think these things are possible today. So we do need to look at regulation and sort of measures to counteract that, but it will be from a policing perspective, meaning we can react when those things happen, but can we still prevent those things from happening? I think that will become more and more difficult.
Yeah, and the reason I asked, because and I assume a lot of our listeners, we are not entirely understand how some prevention measures work and how some countermeasures work. For example, if we take ransomware, you mentioned before, and for example, someone stole my data, like not my personal data, my company's data, and then they ask us to pay the money so that they could return this data to me. How you can make sure that they won't use this data after I paid them? Or like how to make sure like this data was even returned if I didn't pay? And I was thinking like back in 19s, there was like a lot of movies when you have like a hostage situation and the government, they mark money with some paint or something like that, and then they can track this money. Is there some similar tool, for example, like if you can mark the data and then to see, and then there is a way to see if this data was used somewhere outside the company's infrastructure? Like, how do you track it and how do you prevent scammers from using your stolen data if the ransom was paid?
Yeah, I think that is very, very hard to do. Like if you think about somebody holding you ransom for a payment because they have your data and they're sort of telling you, if you don't pay up, I will leak this data on the dark web or something, you already know it's somebody with criminal intent, right? Because otherwise they won't call you in the first place and they won't ask for ransom.
And you can sign a contract with them like, we pay you and you don't do this.
Exactly. So in terms of data exfiltration or data leakage, like the only real solution, I think, is trying to prevent that from happening as much as possible. Like if you think about ransomware in general, there has been an evolution in ransomware where we saw initially people would just encrypt your data and then they would call up the organization or send an email to the organization or through some malware UX, force the organization to pay some Bitcoin to get the decryption key and then get their data back. Okay, fine. But now what we're seeing more and more is double extortion ransomware. So encryption, yes, pay to get the data decrypted, okay, or in most cases you have some sort of recovery capability to get your data back. But then there's also the exfiltration part to your point. Like once the data is out of the organization, the ship has sailed, you can't recover. You have to trust the person that is holding you for ransom that if you pay, they won't leak it anyway. And in most cases, I would say assume that you can't trust those people, right? So what do you do about it? So the answer there, we think, is going to be prevention. And in the world of data security, that means data posture. So how do we make sure that they can't get to that sensitive data in the first place? But this will be a significant effort on our part, of course, right? So we have to figure out all of the data that we've spread around in, SaaS applications like Google Drive or Microsoft 365, or, we store data in S3 buckets and Azure Blob Storage and all of these different locations. What of those data sets, how much of our PII relevant information is in there, and should it be in there? So we have to figure it out beforehand so we can get rid of that data. And if that data doesn't exist, they can't really steal it, right? So that's going to be the first piece, is figure out all of the data that you spread around through all of these different locations. And if possible, if you're not using it actively, get rid of it. That's the most secure data. That's the data that doesn't exist. But if you need to keep it around, then you have to make sure that from a data access governance perspective, you limit the access to the data to only the people and only the accounts that actually need to have access to the data, and only have permissions to do what they need to do with the data. Like, why do they need write permissions on a bucket when they only need to read some files, for example? So you have to implement those types of checks. So finally, the thing is, like, we can figure out, because now we have things like machine learning and artificial intelligence and so on, that can actually help us to figure out, how is my data being used in a normal way? What is the expected way that people interact with data throughout an organization, for example? And that will allow us to build a baseline of normal behavior, which we can then use to evaluate every subsequent access to the data and say, actually, this looks like somebody with malicious intent. Like, nobody will log in from Singapore, I don't know, at 4 a.m. in the morning and try to export an entire SQL database, for example. So something is very, very strange here. So those types of technologies exist and we can implement them. But sort of back to the earlier point is, whatever data is already out there today, it's kind of hard to get the genie back in the bottle, especially when it comes to personal data that we have lingering around in social media and so on.
My point is, normally when you have a ransom, the way that everything starts is that there is an employee who receives an email, he clicks in something, and then he opens a backdoor. And then this is a backdoor where the hackers go inside and start to jump one to another, to another, to another, to another, to another. The problem here is, imagine in a company of, I don't know, 30,000 people, 40,000 people. For me, I read cases that says all the company has been encrypted. And I cannot imagine how everything, because imagine a company that is using two clouds. Imagine Google Cloud and AWS. Plus they have some machines on VMware. Plus, I don't know, 30,000 laptops. Plus all the others, imagine that they have 2 or 3 data centers with some machines or machines. How is possible that you are able to encrypt everything? I can imagine that when the people is talking about the ransom, is only talking 20% or 30% or a number of machines, no? Because I cannot imagine that the security of the company, this big company, is so bad that there is a hacker that is able to reach all the machines, all the databases, and is able to encrypt all the data. So I cannot imagine that case, because you have permissions, you have security, you have users. So it's jumping everything.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. So I think what we usually see happening is that there's this concept of dwell time, right? So people figure out a way into the organization and then they stick around for a while, right? They don't launch the encryption event immediately. They try to figure out what islands, to your point, like what islands of data exist. Okay, they have part in AWS, they have a part in Azure, they have some stuff in GCP, they have some SaaS apps, a lot of on-premises stuff still. So they try to figure out, well, where do the crown jewels of this organization actually live? Like, what is the most important data assets that they have? And that is what they will go after. And in a lot of the cases, they will also go after the backup copy, actually, of all of that data, because the assumption is if you have data everywhere, you at least have one backup copy of all of that data, because otherwise it wouldn't be important data, right? If you didn't have a backup copy.
The backup. Yes.
But yeah, so typically they will stick around for a couple of weeks or a couple of months to identify like what is the best target here for encrypting and potentially exfiltrating the data, and that is what they will go after. If you sort of think about how our own thinking has evolved over the last decades, there has been a mind shift, right? So if you think back to, let's say, the mid 2000s, and you would say to somebody like, I will talk to a stranger on the internet, I will ask them to pick me up in a car and we will drive somewhere, then your friends would say, you are crazy. Like, why would you do that? But today we all use Uber and Lyft to do exactly that, right? So we order a stranger from the internet, we get into the car and we drive around with this stranger. The same thing has happened in our IT infrastructures. Like, if you think back a decade when things were mostly on-prem, we would even say, oh, make sure that our users cannot reach the management network of our systems. Like, we would build a separate VLAN or sometimes even a separate physical network so they couldn't touch our important systems. But today, everything is on the cloud. Like, if I want to log into my AWS console, I have to connect to the public internet to log into my AWS console. And of course, you can implement like, firewalls and whitelists and all of those things, but essentially it lives on the public internet. So the way that we perceive this risk has changed a little bit. It's now sort of become normal. And that is the problem that we're seeing today, is that from a malicious actor or a hacker perspective, you don't have to circumvent the perimeter firewall anymore. You don't have to break in through some sort of IoT device and do all of this sophisticated thing. No, you find some credentials online and then you log into the system and that's it. And you get to the data and you're able to exfiltrate it and steal it. Typically, you find some lower level credential, you log into the environment, you have that compromised account, you perform some lateral movement, you find a privileged account, and you get to the actual data that you want, and that's it. It's over and out. You've circumvented the entire XDR stack, the entire perimeter stack. All of the security controls have been bypassed because those credentials are just there. Like, somebody pastes an API key in a GitHub repository or something like that, and boom. It's done. It's over and out.
Oh my God, this sounds scary, to be honest, because like what you described today, because I was assuming if a hacker got access to, for example, to my account, but I am a small person in the company and they can do a lot with my account. Like, but now you describe they can stay in the system for several months, exploring and checking who is my higher ups and breaching into their accounts and even expanding his own network inside my company's network. And this sounds scary. If I was in position of a security manager, I'd be paranoid because and I remember this TV show Mr. Robot, right? And they don't even had to hack inside the network. They hacked people, like by switching USB drives for them, or like putting something in their bags or something like that, and then you just plug your own USB drive, and you just don't know you've been hacked. You didn't click some shady links on the internet, right? You just plug in the USB drive that you use for your own work, and bam, you're already hacked.
Yeah, that example actually happened in real life, right? A couple of years ago, they did this, like as part of a penetration test, a third-party company trying to figure out like how secure is this banking organization. They were actually hired to do this, of course. They just bought a bunch of USB sticks and they put them in reception in a fishbowl in reception, and they put on like get your free company USB stick with the logo of the company. And all these people in the morning walked in, they picked up that USB stick, were super happy, they got a gift from the company, went to work, plugged it into their laptop, and boom, they were breached. So yeah, people do people-y things, and you have to sort of protect yourself from that somehow.
And normally you receive these kind of emails, no, that are telling to you, you're winning an iPhone, for example, and then everyone is clicking, to get the iPhone.
I'm a Nigerian prince.
Yes, but okay, this is normally a test that the company, to make a security test, how to know how is the security in the company. But of course,
who is dumb and who is not.
No, but the problem is, if you have 10 employees, if you have 30 employees, if you have 100 employees, it's simple to put all the people together, to know the people, to sit all the people and says, okay, we are not going to do that. We have to take care with the security. But when you go to, I don't know, 500,000 people in a company, when you go to these numbers, 2 million in a company, it's impossible that you control this amount of people. 30,000 only. It's impossible to control 30,000 people. So you will have these kind of people who wants to receive emails and to open every email and to click in every link. You have people that never open an email. So and there are people with no knowledge about security, because when they tell to you, okay, you has been trained on security, normally what you have is a online course that you need to click and click and click, and that the people, they don't want to do, because what the people, they are obliged to do that, and they have to do that in the next 24 hours, and they are, come on, who know the answers? And he repeat the test. And this is happening always in all the organization that I have been, nobody wants to do this security training because they're bored, and because it's not what you want to do. What you want to do is something else. And this is something mandatory that you need to do. But it's super, super interesting that, because I understood that the ransomware was less spread than what it is. And, I understood that the hackers are everywhere, because in our case, we made many times the case, we start a service with a whatever thing, a service that you start, and with a DNS. And after 2 hours, you have 300 people attacking. So it's not visitors, it's people attacking. So it's people that is waiting to reach a new DNS entry, a new IP, and automatically go there and try to attack. And it's something crazy, it's the amount of bots that there are in the world these days trying to get information about something. No, it's something amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is far more widespread than people think, I believe, because, for example, there was a report a couple of weeks ago from Apple and I think MIT Sloan of Business, where they showed that I believe 2.6 billion personal records were breached in 2022, which meant that the number of data breaches also more than tripled between, I think, 2013 and 2022. So this problem is really rising rapidly. They also said 1 in 4 Americans have their health data exposed as part of a data breach. 25% of all people in the US, their health data has been leaked as part of a data breach. So this problem is much bigger than people realize, I think.
Yeah, and it will become even bigger because before we had a lot of personal information from taxes, from health, or stored on paper mostly. But now, when the digitalization basically over and everything is online, everything is on cloud, and more our data will become from the moment you burn, you're already on cloud, because the company, the clinic already put you on the insurance of your mother, insurance, and you're already online. Your name, your weight, your height, it's already there. And if it's breached, you're exposed from the day you're born to the public.
Yeah. I think that's sort of the flip side of digital transformation is if everything becomes a digital record, then it becomes a potential part.
But then again, how is different from should we be scared of this more than than being scared of the fact that someone broke up inside of the archive of some clinic and stole some paper data and then use it. Like it's basically this similar occasion, and it's I believe it's as difficult to do because company are actually trying to heavily protect the data, and when it comes to breaching, it mostly comes from from inside leak, for when some of the employees of the company steal the data with an intent to sell.
Do you have insurances for that? There is nothing that you can do. It's like, for example, in the bank sector that I know about that, the credit cards or debit cards. So they was created with the number, and then you have a CVS on the other side of the car. And it was the security, but all the numbers were in the same place. Okay, you have another thing that it was the PIN, but when you want to pay, you don't need to put the PIN. It's only the numbers that you have in this plastic thing. Mm-hmm. So as soon as you have the plastic thing, that's all. So, and every time that you go in a store and you buy, those data are recorded. Okay, there is something called PCI DSS, but not always needs to be covered with this PCI DSS. And the end, what the banks had to do, because the insurances was telling, okay, we cannot pay all this party because they're stealing and stealing and stealing everywhere. Okay, they created this 3D component that at the end now, for example, when you pay, you need to use an SMS that is sent into your cell phone or a pop-up in your application or something like that. A problem, there are companies like Amazon that they are not using these 3D components and it's accepted. The problem is that in the same way can be bypassed, and there are elements that are doing these payments without this 3D, and at the end this is it's a gain. So credit card is completely insecure because I don't know, it was a huge number. Your credit card has been stolen, I don't know how many times. If I tell you 20 times, so it's already in 20 places. So it's crazy, but then the only way that you can fix that is that every 3 months you cancel your credit card and you get a new one. So it's the only more or less correct way to have a new credit, as you know, a safe credit card. But we cannot do anything these days. The only thing that you can do, I have to mind, as a users, not as a company, the only thing that we can do is say, okay, it's what it is, and that's it.
You have to think in terms of cyber hygiene a little bit, I think. So you can, of course, make it more difficult to get to your data than to get to your neighbor's data, so to speak, right? So the idea is, I want to implement things like multi-factor authentication, like your point. Like every important application that I use, like Google Authenticator or Authy or Microsoft Authenticator, some sort of third-party authentication tool, to not only have a username and a password, but also that other factor that I need to prove that I'm saying who I am. Now you have Apple, using things like passkey and so on to make that easier for people who aren't like super technical to actually use similar technology to make it much more difficult. And I think it's the same thing with businesses, right? You can't avoid it. There's like no silver bullet when it comes to cybersecurity. But what you can do is you can make it much, much more difficult for people with bad intentions to target you than it is to target your neighbor. And then they will go after your neighbor and they won't go after you. So yeah, implement good cyber hygiene is even from a personal perspective, that's probably the best you can do today, unless you wanna, to your point, like change credit cards every 3 months. but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And on that note, I think we can to remind to our listeners to maintain your cyber hygiene. Okay. And Filip, for those who would like to learn more about what you do or to learn from what you post, where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm mostly active on LinkedIn these days. So if you just put Filip with an F Verloy in LinkedIn, you will find me. I'm also on Twitter as Filip V, and I run my blog on philipv.net. But if you want to reach out via LinkedIn to discuss anything, always happy to do so.
Cool.
Awesome. We will have all the links in the description for you guys. Stay safe. And once again, I want to remind you to subscribe to our bi-weekly MKDev Dispatch newsletter to be updated with everything happens around, with all the articles, all the new videos. And don't forget to go to our MKDev store page to purchase our awesome swag for you to have. And to you, Filip, thank you for joining us today. I still have like a million more questions to ask and to discuss for the future. I hope we will have this opportunity again sometimes in the future. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Bye-bye, everyone.
The cloud tech industry is evolving so fast. Do you keep up with it by improving your skills or upskilling your team? At MKDev, we offer a variety of workshops for just that, from the basics to expert knowledge. Before delivering our workshops and training sessions, we carry out a detailed assessment of each participant. To make sure the workshop is helpful for you and your team, we will add more content to it or throw out what you already know. Or we create a custom workshop specifically for the needs of your team and the specifics of your project.